No longer a gang member? Like you're no longer affiliated with any gang?
I just want to be legit. I want to build my own community. I want the buildings to be good.
In federal prison, Quando Rondo was severely beaten. It wasn't about money, either. It was not disrespectful. Even the King Von matter wasn't resolved. No, Quando was jumped for doing something that the gang views as unacceptable. He turned to leave the set. Let me explain it to you. Once a certified craw dummy, this man is now in his 60s. To openly criticizing gang culture, becoming an Islamist, and informing everyone that gang life is a fraud. Don't forget about the streets, particularly those behind bars. Gang, there are repercussions for that kind of choice. However, this is the actual event that resulted in Quando's incarceration. It's not only about his getting out of the Crips. This story is about murder, betrayal, federal charges, and a man who at last understood that the people who were meant to support him were actually the ones who set him up for death. This is a deep narrative that you all need to hear. Stay with me, guys, and let's talk about Quando's prison experience since he dropped his flag and declared himself a civilian. The scene in Beverly Hills. We must go back to August 19, 2022. In order to comprehend Quando's reasons for leaving the gang and the beating he received as a result. In Los Angeles, Quando Rondo was engaged in musical endeavors. He was doing what rappers do, which is to move throughout the city. Meetings, studio sessions, and establishing connections. Here's the problem about LA, though. You should check in with the local gangs if you're from out of town and not from Los Angeles, especially if you have any connections to street politics. It has existed for decades as an unwritten norm. Usually, everything goes smoothly after you check in, show respect, and let them know you're in their city. The Rolling 60 Crips were associated with Quando Rondo. That's one of the largest and most reputable gangs in the city, the entire set out of LA. Thus, Quando checked in with them as required when he arrived in Los Angeles. He connected with the locals, informed them of his visit, and most likely had a brief affair with them. Everything appeared to be cool. Quando believed he was safe. He believed that after checking in, he was free to travel around Los Angeles without any issues. Isn't that what checking in is meant to mean? Everyone eats when you treat them with respect and they return the favor. Quando was unaware that his setup was truly a result of checking in. You see, Lil Durk had contacts in Los Angeles. Strong ties. We're discussing actual connections with influential and powerful gang members. Durk wasn't just a Chicago rapper attempting to make his way in Los Angeles. He was locked. There was history for him. Old photos of Durk with Brick Baby, a well-known LA with a lot of street cred, are included. For the Grahams, these were more than just photo opportunities. These were genuine connections that developed over time. Additionally, Durk was said to have the contacts necessary to exact retribution for King Von's passing. To help you all understand why Durk wanted Quando dead, let's go back even further. First of all, November 6, 2020, Atlanta, Georgia. Lil Durk's brother, artist and best friend, King Von, got into a fight with Quando Rondo and his group outside the Monaco Hookah Lounge. There is disagreement about the specifics of how it began, but it is certain that Quando and his people were confronted by Von and his people, and that quickly things became violent. Shots were fired during the fight. Lulu Tim, Quando Rondo's homeboy, produced a gun and shot King Von more than once. Van's injuries caused his death. Later, Lulum would assert self-defense, claiming that he was shielding Quando from Van's assault. It seems that this defense was upheld legally, as Lulum's murder accusation was ultimately dropped. But Lil Durk didn't care about all of that. He had lost his brother, whether in self-defense or not. And someone had to pay for that in street politics. What a judge says is irrelevant to the streets. Blood for blood is a requirement of the code that the streets follow. Thus, Durk allegedly planned his retaliation for about 2 years. Durk supposedly saw his chance when Quando visited Los Angeles in August 2022 and checked in with the Crips. this is when things go crazy, family. Quando's location was exposed when he checked in with the Rolling 60 Crips. Someone from the tomb set apparently alerted Lil Durk's guys exactly where Quando was going to be and what automobile he was driving, according to later federal investigations and street rumors. Take a moment to consider that. Quando followed the rules and did everything correctly. He arrived. He was respectful. He adhered to the code. Additionally, it is said that the very individuals who were meant to defend him betrayed him to his adversaries. Lil Durk was later accused by the feds of hitting men in Los Angeles as they were waiting for this precise information. Credit cards were in their possession. They rented automobiles. They were armed. They just needed a place. And they relocated after learning such information from Crips associates. August 19, 2022, at a Beverly Hills petrol station, Quando and his cousin Lou Pob, whose true name was Savasa Robinson, were in a car together. They presumably didn't believe anything was wrong as they pulled into the petrol station, just trying to fill up. At that moment, an SUV arrived. Several of the gunmen fled. Having been informed, they were aware of Quando's precise vehicle. In the middle of the day, they started shooting. Professional execution technique. Several shots. Lou Pab was struck several times. His wounds caused his death. He was only 24. Despite being shot, Quando Rondo lived. The gunman left the area. But this is what actually caused Quando's mental instability. His cousin's death wasn't the only thing. He was shot, but that wasn't all. It was trying to figure out how it occurred. When people began to talk, when the specifics began to emerge, Quando came to terms with the truth as the feds began assembling their case. He said that his attackers had learned his whereabouts from the Rolling 60's Crips, the same gang he checked in with and was linked with. He had been set up to die by those who were meant to protect him. Because he put his trust in the wrong people, his cousin was killed. The realization, the pivotal moment. Consider the sensation of that. You abide by every regulation. You are respectful. You arrive. You fulfill all of your obligations. And the group that is there to protect you actually turns you over to murderers. Quando Rondo had his epiphany at that point. That's when, for him, everything made sense. Loyalty wasn't important in the gang life. It has nothing to do with fraternity. It had nothing to do with safety. It was all a fraud. These individuals would betray you for cash, contacts, political influence, or anything else that would help them at the time. Lil Pop, his cousin, lost his life due to gang politics, checking in, and having faith in a system that was created to exploit and discard individuals. After then, Quando began to change. He halted the Rolling 60's are claimed. He ceased making allusions to gangs. He began speaking out about the phony nature of gang life, how it was all a trap, and how this culture was exploiting and destroying young black men. He became an Islamic convert. He began to pray 5 times every day. The Quran began to be read by him. He began discussing how to find meaning and tranquility outside of the streets. Nor was this a phony religious conversion for the cameras. Quando was actually attempting to alter his life. He would discuss how he came to see the futility of gang banging in interviews and on social media. How it only resulted in imprisonment and death. How you would be set up when it suited the folks who claimed to be your brothers. How he desired to leave that entire way of life. The issue with leaving a gang, particularly one as large and well-organized as the Rolling 60's Crips, is this. They don't simply let you go. You're meant to stay in for life once you're in. One of the worst things you can do is to leave the gang, especially if you publicly criticize it. That is known as dropping your flag in gang culture. And that may be a death sentence, depending on the situation. Or you will be violated, at the very least. You will suffer a beating. You will be put to the test. You must set an example for the other members of the gang so they won't think they can simply go too. Quando was aware. He was aware that there would be repercussions for leaving the Crips in public and accusing gang culture of being a hoax. However, he had already lost his cousin by then. He had been shot before. He was well aware that he would most likely be slain if he remained in the gang. As a citizen, he decided to take his chances. The federal accusations. The crazy part isn't even that. As Quando dealt with all of this, getting over his shooting wound, grieving over his cousin, quitting the gang, and becoming an Islamist, the FBI were constructing an entirely other argument against him. Quando Rondo was charged with federal offenses in December 2023. Possession with purpose to distribute marijuana and possession with intent to distribute controlled drugs are two examples of conspiracy. Federal drug offenses with severe penalties. Here's what makes this so crazy. Quando had nothing to do with the drug organization that was busted. He didn't go out and sell drugs. They weren't being transported by him. He wasn't handling the process. However, because he was aware of it and chose not to report it, the government nonetheless charged him. For those of you who are unaware, allow me to explain how federal conspiracy accusations operate. You don't need to be the one who committed the crime in order to be found guilty of conspiracy. All you need to do is be aware of it and refrain from doing anything that can be interpreted as supporting the conspiracy. To the Fed, even failing to snitch might be considered a part of the conspiracy. Around Quando, people were transporting narcotics. They were included in his crew, his social circle, and those he held in high regard. The federal government had proof that Quando was competent. They accused him of being a part of the conspiracy since he remained silent and failed to disclose it to the authorities. Consider the situation he found himself in. He recently declared that he was done living on the streets and publicly condemned gang culture. He was attempting to live a moral life after converting to Islam. However, he is currently being charged with federal narcotics conspiracy for failing to inform his people. And this is the Quando didn't snitch yet, though. He remained silent despite facing severe federal time and being aware that cooperating could help him win the case or get his sentence reduced. He accepted accountability for his accusation and got ready to serve his sentence. 20 years was what the feds wanted. Take a moment to process that. Despite not even being directly involved in the drug business, he was charged with conspiracy and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. That is the severity of federal sentence, particularly when individuals are being used as examples. Quando fought the lawsuit with his attorneys. They bargained. They provided proof of his metamorphosis, his conversion to Islam, and his attempts to escape the streets. Additionally, the judge sentenced him to 2 years and 9 months. Although it is still a considerable amount of time, it is far less than the 20 years that the federal government had requested. This was viewed as a victory by some. According to some, Quando still has to do time for effectively knowing too much and failing to disclose it. Quando, however, agreed to the punishment and went to the federal jail to begin his time. The beating begins at that point. Politics in prison. The same gang dynamics that govern the streets also govern federal prisons, albeit with greater intensity and concentration. You can't simply avoid folks you have issues with when you're incarcerated. You are confined in the same area, walking the same yard, and eating in the same cafeteria. Additionally, there are a lot of rolling 60's Crips in federal jails. They have a plan. Their collars have been shot. They are organized and they remember when someone treats the set disrespectfully. When Quando Rondo hit the feds, word quickly spread. Everyone was aware of his identity. He had openly shed his flag and declared gang culture a sham, and everyone knew it. And everyone was aware that such a transgression is not tolerated. Quando's previous gang associates beat him up when he was incarcerated. Although the specifics of what happened have not yet been made public, several individuals have attested to the fact that he was molested and jumped for lowering his flag. This has nothing to do with Von King. It has nothing to do with Lil Durk. This has nothing to do with Lou Pa's murder. In particular, Quando's decision to publicly condemn gang culture and leave the rolling 60's was at issue. That was the purpose of the beating. It is possible to quarrel with rivals in gang politics. Shootouts are an option. Even fights might be lost by you. However, you cannot publicly disdain the gang by leaving it. That goes too far and will undoubtedly result in reprisals. The irony is terrible. When Quando realized the group had put him up for death, he left. He understood that gang loyalty was biased and that the entire situation was phony. However, the gang continued to pursue him when he left, even after he was imprisoned for not betraying his people. He seemed incapable of winning in any case. Remain with the group and run the risk of being violated and set up again. Get violated if you try to improve your life and leave the group. The system is set up to capture you regardless of whatever decision you make, the change. And for that, I'm being punished. I want everyone to understand that doing so does result in punishment. Here's what makes Quando Rondo's story so amazing though. He is standing by his decision to leave that life behind in spite of everything. Losing his cousin, being shot, facing federal charges, and being beaten up in prison. According to reports from those who have interacted with him, he is doing his sentence with a purpose. He continues to follow Islam. He continues to read and study. In a setting when drama is all around, he is avoiding it as much as possible. His priorities include finishing his sentence and leaving to be with his children. Quando was given less than 3 years instead of 20. Much of that time has already been served by him. He has a date for release in sight. Additionally, he has made it apparent that he is done living on the streets altogether when he leaves. It's referred to as growth. That's what some refer to as his humility. He's just doing what he needs to do to survive, according to some. However you choose to describe it, Quando Rondo has changed after August 19, 2022. A person is changed by being set up by their own gang, witnessing your cousin's death, being shot yourself, and realizing that the entire system is set up to ruin you. Additionally, even if Quando is paying a high price for that adjustment, it improved him. Consider his adventure. In Savannah, Georgia, he was born out of nothing. Rapper made it, got sucked into street politics and lost. Despite being beaten up in prison, facing federal accusations, surviving an assassination attempt, and losing loved ones, he continues to stand. Continuing to move forward and strive for improvement. The narrative of Quando Rondo teaches you what occurs when you discover that the game has been rigged. After claiming to have his back, the group allegedly disclosed his adversaries his whereabouts. He was set up to die by the very individuals he trusted. That treason cost his cousin dearly. Additionally, when he attempted to abandon that existence, he claimed, "The gang didn't want you to wake up, so they violated him for publicly stating that gang culture was a hoax. The reality is not something they want you to see. They do not wish for you to go, and encourage others to depart. They must use those who leave as role models." But Quando accepted the infraction and continued to move. He continued to move, taking the federal time. Despite getting shot, being beaten, and losing his cousin, he is dedicated to improving himself. You need a different kind of strength for it. Really, one of the most authentic metamorphoses in hip-hop at the moment is Quando Rondo's narrative. This isn't a publicity-driven redemption storyline. Knowing that there would be repercussions, this man resolved to change his life after being set up by his own group and realizing everything was a lie. For fleeing the Crips, he was violated in prison. However, that infraction just strengthened his argument. He described the gang culture as a swindle, and it turned out to be just that. A system that takes advantage of people and punishes them whether they stay or leave. The same Crips Quando checked in with are said to have provided Lil Durk's hitman with Quando's location. Consider how perverse that is. Instead of defending one of their own, the gang accepted cash, favors, or political points. That isn't loyalty. That's business. Quando saw it for what it truly was. He is currently serving federal prison for not spying on members of his inner circle, not for drug sales or acts of violence. He might have complied and possibly left in less time or not at all. He took his 2 years and 9 months like a man, though, and remained silent. More proof that leaving the gang was the right choice comes from the beating he received in prison for losing his flag. members of a legitimate organization are protected. Real brotherhood doesn't penalize you for leaving and then set you up for death. It is anticipated that Quando Rondo will be launched shortly. And when he leaves, everyone will be watching to see if he truly remains a civilian or if he resumes his previous habits. Considering all he's endured, considering how he's carried, I believe that after all of this hardship, he has truly had enough of that existence. Lul Pob, his cousin, died on the streets. He nearly died himself. He will have to spend years in federal jail. The cost eventually becomes unaffordable. Quando's realization that his own gang had betrayed him was that turning point. In real time, growth looks like this. Real, not flawless, not simple, not without repercussions. Quando Rondo transformed from a rapper with gang affiliations embroiled in lethal feuds to a Muslim guy undertaking. Every time while attempting to escape that entire globe, he will be put to the test on the streets. He was previously violated by the gang. There are still his adversaries. However, but Quando decided to be a new guy. And regardless of whether others accept that choice or not, you have to recognize the bravery required to leave everything you know, even when doing so carries risks of its own. This is the full tale of Quando Rondo's beating at the federal jail. Not because of Lil Durk or King Von, but because he dared to declare the gang life to be a fraud and then leave it behind. That truth cost him dearly in the eyes of the group. He is still standing, though, and he is still evolving into a greater version of himself. Real, acknowledged, and genuine. And that's as real as it gets, what Quando is doing at the moment. Gang, remember to sub up. To keep you all informed, we will be releasing news every day.